Hello, everybody. It's just 3 o'clock, so we're going to get started in just a moment. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Teresa Younger, the president and CEO of the Ms. Foundation for Women. So we're going to wait a second, have a few folks join. We've got a wonderful guest with us today. I can't believe it. Having my own little bit of momentary excitement about it. As everybody's joining, thank you so much for being with us today. And I would wave, but I actually don't know how to do all those things on the Instagram. So we're just going to let you join. I'm going to go ahead and start my introduction because I know our guest is going to be here in just a moment. I want to welcome you all to the 5th conversation of our Pocket Change IG Live series. I'm Teresa Younger, the president and CEO of the Ms. Foundation for Women. In July, the Ms. Foundation released a new landmark report called Pocket Change, How Women and Girls of Color Are Getting More Done with Less. This shouldn't be a surprise to any of us that women and girls of color are amongst the least supported and invested in groups in this country. It looked at the philanthropic giving to women and girls of color in the United States and in the U.S. territories, and really set a baseline for what that funding was going to look like. In it, we found that women and girls of color-led organizations are actually getting just about 5.5% of all philanthropic dollars. That equates to $5.48 per woman and girl of color in the United States and U.S. territories. Such a tiny amount. The report's packed with tons of information, tons. And today, we will be lifting up how the systemic oppression of what is happening to women and girls in the nonprofit sector is actually being replicated in many other sectors. And it won't be a surprise to anybody when you learn about that. And so every industry, every sector is impacted by the lack of investment in women and girls, particularly women and girls of color. Our call to action is to name it, track it, and increase it. Name your support for women and girls of color. Track how you are currently or actually supporting women and girls of color, being very, very specific about that, and then increase that support. For those of you who are out there, you can find out more about the report if you have not read it yet at forwomen.org. Again, the report is called Pocket Change. My guest today is going to be on in just a moment. We're super excited that she is joining us today. But this is just for those of you who are watching. We've done 5 of these Pocket Change series thus far, and we are going to take a little break after this and come back to you in October with a new series of interviews and conversations about what's going on. And Pocket Change is so relevant to so many conversations that even last night, the Ms. Foundation for Women was engaged in a conversation that talked about how Pocket Change and the investment of women and girls of color is actually reflective in how we are in our economic security, in what the wage gap looks like, what the wealth gap looks like, and in all of those spaces. So what does the economic impact have on this lack of investment in women and girls of color overall? And we talked a little bit last night about what that investment looks like and how philanthropy is actually perpetuating the lack of overall investment in women and girls of color. It was a really, really, truly exciting conversation, and if anybody wants to watch it, that conversation took place with the Brooklyn Historical Society conversation. So I just want to put that out there if you're looking for a few more things. And our guest today is going to be Bianca Lawson, and we're just waiting for Bianca to chime in. I know she's out there, so we're going to wait a second and have her join us. But because I know the conversation that we're going to have is going to be truly enlightening. I'm a little worried she's going to be interviewing me instead of me interviewing her, but I am really looking forward to that, and really excited about having that conversation. In fact, Bianca is with us now. She's just coming on. Hop on with us. Yep, here she comes. I love this kind of technology that we've been playing with, which is this, putting it out there and then having folks chime in. Oh my gosh. Everybody, look who is with us. It is Bianca Lawson. How are you? Oh, we can't hear you. Is it me? It could be me. Can you try again? You look fantastic. I will tell you that. Well, we're trying to figure this out. I'm just trying to make sure it's not my phone because, I'm so talented that could happen to me. Nope, I'm not hearing you. I'm not hearing you. Okay, let's just do this. If you are out there and, I think Bianca's going to come back in and join us because we were having a little bit of a connection issue, which will be great. Anyhow, some of you may know Bianca from her amazing work and her long history in the business for over 20 years. Are you there? Okay, hold on. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to see if it's my phone because it wouldn't be surprising if it was my phone. This is true. Oops. This is what happens sometimes. Okay, let's try it again. No? Everybody else hears? If you can hear us, couldn't you put a wave on? Okay, but we can't hear Bianca. So I think, Jay, what do you think I should do? You think I should hop off and reconnect? Bianca, can you hop off and reconnect? Because we think it could be your phone, and then we'll see if we can get it to work. Okay. I got it. Okay. This is the art of technology, right? We're constantly trying to figure out what's going on with these things. We're going to do it. We got it. This is so funny. Oh, you know what? You all are so great because you already know how this works. You just kind of have to reconnect sometimes. So Bianca's going to go off and she's going to reconnect with us, and we're going to get it. We're going to get it up and going a second time. For those of you who haven't been with us before, I only suggest it's usually me because guess what? It's usually me. I notoriously am on the wrong Instagram account. I am notoriously pushing the wrong buttons, and so that is the art of what we are doing, and so I'm never surprised. So let's see. I'm going to see if we can get Bianca back on. We are sending her the request, and we're going to see if we can hear her this time. You want to hear her. She's got some great things to share with us, and I know. Hello, are you there? Oh, goodness, I still can't hear you. Oh, hold on one second. I think my team is trying to work in the background to figure out how we can make this work for us. Oh, okay. We're gonna give it one more second, but why don't you just wave at everybody? Because everybody says we look really good, Bianca. That's true. Okay, you enabled your microphone, which is good news. I think that's what we have to do. You don't have earbuds or anything, do you? Oh, wait. I almost heard something. Oh, I'm hearing something. No, I can't hear you now. But when you were pushing it, I could hear something going on. Maybe you're too far away. Say something now. I can hear you moving the phone around, though. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, yeah. the art of the conversation is like having a conversation. Oops, and then her phone just dropped. So when she comes back, we can see the ceiling in her place. I'm going to talk a little bit about pocket change while Bianca is coming back online with us and checking her phone to see if we can get this all to work. For those of you who have not read Pocket Change is a report that actually interviewed and surveyed over 1,000 different kinds of women of color led organizations throughout this country. And we talked about it from women of color led by and for women of color led organizations. And the reason we did that is we really wanted to take a solid and hard look at who are the decision makers within organizations. And then we wanted to take a step back and create a baseline so that we could help hold philanthropy accountable for how many dollars they are moving to the field specifically for women and girls of color. You know, somebody just wrote that Instagram Live is not going to let us be great. You know what? We are going to be great. We already know this is going to happen. So thank you all for hanging in with us. Stay with us because we know that Bianca's going to be back on, and we will just post out the conversation when she's there. And we see her, and we're gonna be able to hear her soon. I'm feeling very confident about that. Okay. I will tell you, Bianca, while you're doing that, like there is so much love for us right now as we're going through this technical challenge. Yeah, folks totally understand that this is really what happens. Yes? No. It's okay. You know, keep playing. We'll figure this out because we got time. Okay, it says make sure your Bluetooth is connected and make sure the volume is turned up on your phone. And I'm hearing like some kind of connection something, and it's making me, yeah. Yeah, for those who are joining, we're just having some technical difficulties. We're trying to get Bianca's voice to come through loud and clear because that's part of what we do at the Ms. Foundation. We help amplify voices, and we want to make sure you can hear the wisdom of everybody's story and lived experiences and the work that we are trying to do. At the Ms. Foundation, we fund grassroots organizations throughout the United States doing the work in their communities. We do that by fully trusting in who they are and what they are doing. So we are going to try this one more time, or two more times, or three more times, whatever it takes. Because I really want you to hear from Bianca. I'm super excited about having her on with us today. She's going to be back with us in just a moment. And she understands the work of what's happening on the ground.
Can you hear me now?
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Yay.
Woo, woo, woo.
Okay. Clearly,
thank God, because I was tired of my own voice. So
clearly I'm not technologically advanced. So
I just told you, like, I totally started on a different Instagram page. So we are good. We are good. And now we can hear you.
Okay, good. It's real. It's real.
Thank you so much. And gosh, talk about persist. I'm just going to say this straight up right now.
Yeah.
It's that kind of persistence that has allowed women of color to do the work that we need to do. We like doing more with less. We will get this done. I mean,
exactly. We'll make it happen somehow.
We will make it happen. Well, let me just start out by saying it is wonderful to see you, and it is wonderful to have you. It's T-shirt Thursday, by the way, and so I have a new T-shirt on. It's Black Women Lead 2020, and I wore it Yeah, I wore it because I knew you were going to be on. And, I told people who you were. I think everybody knows who you are as one of the stars of Queen Sugar, of Little Liars. For us, you're the biggest star in our hearts because you were part of our feminist block party, Will You Roar video campaign.
Yes.
I mean, we could read all of your acclamations and all the things you have done, but sometimes it's the things that are closest to you. And so I just want to say thank you for being part of our Will You Roar initiative, which was part of our feminist block party, which took place in May, because it was an opportunity for folks to learn about Ms. and our wonderful grantees. And you asked the question, will you roar? Will your voice be heard in the change you want to make? So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I loved being a part of that. So thank you.
Yeah. So let's just jump into some questions. And I did say, I don't know if you heard, like I was a little nervous because I know you're like ready to ask me questions too. I'm gonna start and then we'll get into this. So this is a time like none other. It's the pandemic, election season, and all that is happening on the grounds with Black Lives Matter and our movement towards racial equity and lifting up of Black women's voices and women of color's voices and our trans siblings and recognizing what is happening. Tell us a little bit about what this moment has meant for you and what you've been up to.
This is like a really extraordinary moment, specifically for women of color. I mean, look at Kamala and all of sort of these movements, these protests, BLM are being led by Black women of color, and I think that doesn't get highlighted enough, We were talking about that, how like sort of the men in the movement people know about, but not always the women and how much they actually contributed and founded most of it. So I think that right now, people are really using their voices, they're really kind of, there's been so much kind of like dark things and sad things going on with COVID and with all the killings and stuff, but I feel like people are really coming out and being like, okay, enough, and like, all around the world, and really not just sort of sitting back passively and saying, my God, this is so terrible, but like, no, we are going to change this. We're going to keep yelling and screaming and protesting and on our keyboards and out in the streets until things change. And so it's, I really feel like there's a positive shift happening and people are really coming together around this. It's not just like one person over here, one person over there, but kind of worldwide. And so even though like horrible things happening, I really feel like something's changing now. I think that will affect the rest of our lives in a really big way. Yeah.
It's so true. I do think this is a different time. I also love and appreciate you calling out that women of color have been at the forefront of every social justice movement since the suffrage movement. In fact, as we celebrate the 100th anniversary as we commemorate the 100th anniversary of the suffrage movement and the day white women got the right to vote, we are calling in all of the names of all of the women of color who put their lives on the line, who also said, we may be women, but we are also Black women and we are also women of color, and defined themselves and said, we can't just have issues without involving who we are. And so, identity politics is real and has always been real. And women of color have been at the forefront of every social justice movement. And now it is, and we cannot erase ourselves. We have to remember that the movement for Black Lives was started by 3 queer Black women, right? We have to remind ourselves that Say Her Name was started by a Black woman. We have to remind ourselves and instead of asking where are they, maybe they get a moment to breathe while the rest of us step up and step in.
Right. Exactly.
I want to, when I was 7, I had a second grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. Blackmore. She is the first, she was the first woman of color outside of my family who I ever saw. And Mrs. Blackmore was like 6'1" Black woman who like had a gray streak in her hair, and I have one too, but not as beautiful as hers. But I was in second grade. I was about 7 years old, and I was, organizing something inappropriately on the playground, probably. And I remember Ms. Blackmore coming over to me and saying, we expect more from you, and so will everybody else. And that has had such an impact on me all of my life. And I think it really is this understanding that women of color, Black women specifically, have been expected to do more and be more. And I'd love for you to share with everybody, has there been a moment in your life where you realized that the realities were going to be different for you?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me, I was on a set. I was the only person of color, women of color on the set. I think person of color, and an incident happened, and my reflex was to do one thing, but I stopped and I was like, okay, you know what? It's not just about me right now. I'm representing all of the other women of color, and I, had to take a moment, like, you know what? I can't just, in a way, embrace being kind of like a role model and taking sort of the high road. And when I walked out of the scene and went around to the chairs, there was an extra that was a Black woman, and she came over to me, and I guess she had, read the room, and she came over to me and she said, you know what, Bianca, she's like, we are all watching you. Like, we're all watching you, and the way that you carry yourself with such class and dignity, I just wanted you to say that God bless you, and you mean so much to us. And so sometimes you make these choices in these moments, and you have no idea the effect it's going to have, or who's paying attention, or who's watching, but it does, but it has an effect. And and there was like, I did this, it was like a podcast with an actress that was on that show, and our showrunner, who is a white woman, said to me after the podcast, we were talking about anything that sort of erudite, and I've been working with this woman for all season, and she was like, I didn't realize how articulate you are. And I was,
no.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I almost want to say her name, but I'm not going to. And I was just like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like there's like this, it's a weird thing. It's like, like they don't expect you, but like you also have to sort of, it's a strange thing where like everyone else was kind of getting away with fluff, but for me it was like, oh wow, and it's like, it was a little bit like, it's a little bit upsetting, but it is what it is, and I know also when I was in school, but like fourth grade, I did sort of have to sort of prove myself more, to my teachers. And I didn't understand at the time why that was until I got older, why I kind of had to like overachieve for them to be like, oh, wow, okay, but it is what it is. And I think that the more that we talk about it and we sort of uplift these other, sisters, it won't, it won't be so much of a struggle because we'll help each other,
Yeah. That is so true. What you just said about kind of when we are unexpectedly good and articulate at what we do or our job, right?
Yeah.
And it seems so bizarre. When people say that to me, I'm always like, well, I do have a 4-year degree, and I also was supported by folks who said this is what you need to do, right? So we all know that, in our report, in our pocket change report, that's one of the things that we saw was that people did not trust Black and brown women. And that was why they were not investing the way they should, right? And so sometimes when we hear these comments, it's really because people don't believe or trust that we have the skill sets, the knowledge, the understanding, the education, the training, the whatever happens to be that we bring to the table. And everybody's experience is super real, and we understand it, and it has to be believed, And so what we find with our grantee partners across the United States and in the U.S. territories is really that they are experts in their lives. And they know the solutions that will help their communities. And it might not be what other people expect their
Mm-hmm.
solution to be.
Mm-hmm.
But they have that opportunity to kind of really lift up their voices and tell their stories and be the experts, right? And
Mm-hmm.
show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have to show up better, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
in our report, every organization we talked to didn't just do one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They held multiple issues
Mm-hmm.
and they worked with multiple strategies. So
Mm-hmm.
while they were working to do education after school, they were
Mm-hmm.
also helping with reproductive rights and justice, and they were making sure that people were registered to vote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like there was not one. They are some of the best multi-talented leaders that we have out there in the sector doing this work. And when I hear, you know, somebody who has been in the field as long as you have, who has been so talented and been, you know, paving ways. I mean, the fact that you would even say, I may have been the only person of color on the set until, you know, like that means we're still showing up by ourselves. And, you know, so I'd love to ask the question, you know, how does that feel for you? And have you had mentors or somebody who's opened the door? I mean, like the reality is that Queen Sugar is, you know, Avery DuVernay is a Woman of Vision Award honoree.
I mean, yeah.
And like you, so here you are. You know, what's that like to be on a set, be working in an experience on a Black Women's Network with the dynamics of it? Like, can you tell us a little about that? Because like that support's key.
No, it's huge. And this is like the first time I've been in a situation where all of the leaders on the network, on the show, I think the majority of the department heads are all women, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yes. And so I think there's something about seeing it in action, seeing someone like Ava in action, seeing someone like Oprah in action, you know, it's so inspiring, and they do so many things across so many fields that it makes you feel like, oh, I can do everything. There's no limit to what I can do. Like what you're talking about, the multitasking, like doing every single thing in different spaces, and most of the time not getting the appreciation, you know, not like really understanding how much hard work that is. And then they both are really good about pulling other women of color up with them, you know? It's just, it's a wonderful, wonderful time right now. And I feel so blessed to be a part of this movement right now, where these doors are being opened, but most time being opened by other women to other women, you know? And so I'm excited. And then getting to work with all of the different female directors that come, you know, and hiring their experiences, and just so supportive, you know, such cheerleaders. And Ava's like, she forgets nothing, not a birthday, not a this, not a that, like just, and you would think, who has the time, right? Who has the time? Yeah. But she really is a cheerleader, and she remembers every tiny little like amazing moment in your life and reaches out and just like gives love, you know? Yeah. And so, and Oprah's the same way. And so it's just really, I just feel really, really grateful that I get to even just be sort of like witness to it. And I think there are also concerns that, you know, you might have that wouldn't be heard on another set, you know? Yeah. There's certain like nuances and complexities that other shows would not even address or understand to even address.
So give us a sampling, because your character even it has a level of complexity on the show. Give us an example of what that complexity looks like and the value of telling that story.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I love Darla, and I love that she's not like a stereotype, and that she doesn't sort of just have like one mode. Yeah. But you're really getting to see her life and how she got to where she got to. And, you know, the highs, the lows, the goods, the bad, you know, and that she, you know, came from an educated, you know, well-to-do Black family, you know, in DC. And it wasn't like this weird thing of like, oh yeah, you know, her dad was absentee and like her mom was on drugs. Like, you know, it's like, this can happen to anybody. Right. And, you know, and she, you know, is a mom, but not like a perfect mom, you know, she's still figuring it out, and the complexities between her and Ralph Angel and what that looks like in terms of co-parenting and his stuff and her stuff, and then the family. And just all of those dynamics, all of those layers, all of those complexities, I haven't always gotten a chance to do that. It's like, okay, you're the girlfriend, you're the mean girl, you're the bitch, you're the sexy girl, like, you're a supernatural character, but we don't really, there's no real like backstory for you. You just like arrived and you're like a witch or something,
Right.
And then like there's no like progress. You're just kind of like, the Black character,
Yeah.
and you make with it what you will. But on Queen Sugar, they let me play and they let me explore, and they really love it. It's really collaborative, and I love that. I love that. There's a real freedom to it. So as an actor, it's like, oh my God, this is great. I get to do all these things. And if I have an idea or in the moment, an impulse, it's like, yeah, try it, go for it,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love how complex your character. Like, I feel like, and what you said was so right? There's no stereotype coming into it. So you get to like really push back and like redefine and show how challenging things can be, and I love your character, and
Thank you.
Re-binge watched like everything because I was like, wait, I got to know everything. Although, needless to say, on a really beautiful weekend in Brooklyn, New York, I was in front of my iPad the whole time.
Thank you. But there was something I wanted. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, there was something I wanted to ask you. You were talking about, in terms of the report. What I love about it is that like it shows the data, right? And we were talking before about like even like with microloans, right, in other countries, and how like the data shows that like if you give the loan to a woman, they use it to uplift the rest of the community, whereas maybe like if they give it to the man, he'll like, maybe not pay it back, maybe use it for himself, but like the data shows that when you do invest in women of color, it's not just like a great idea to do just to do, but like it actually, their like returns, they actually perform better and share it. It's not just like, they don't keep it to themselves. They like help out other families and everybody, the entire family, the entire community. So that's also I love about the report, because it's like hard data,
Yeah, well, it was the data that we always knew it. So, we knew that women were having the greater impact. We were seeing it in reports, right? We've seen it in Africa. We see it in the United States. Actually, water issues in this country are as prevalent as water issues in other countries, right? I mean, we wouldn't have had the Dakota pipeline conversation if water wasn't a very real issue, if the environment wasn't very real. And there are times when bottles of water are given out, right? In Africa, they might drill a well. There are times when bottles of water are given out and the men would take it and drink the water, right? And the women would take the water back, right? To their children, to their grandparents, to them, and figure out how to ration it and figure out what to do. And, that is not a downer on men. That is a recognition that women, particularly women of color and particularly Black women, have stepped into and held their communities with such regard, right? I mean, honestly, our political setting wouldn't be where it was, except for the fact that women of color have continued to show up at the polls. And
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that. Yes.
And like the truth is truth. White women did not show up at the polls with the same regard for their communities and for the next generation the way Black women and other women of color did. That's just a reality. It's not a judgment, right? It's a reality. We have hard data that tells us what that is. We have hard data in our report that tells us that women of color led organizations are serving their communities in a multitude of ways. And if we trusted that they actually had some answers, and instead of trying to impose it on them, we could get a lot farther and a lot faster. And what we know is when there are more diverse voices in solving any problem, more diverse voices across the table in solving any problem, we get a better result. We get a better result. Thank you for lifting that up in the report, because I think sometimes people think, it's interesting. I was in a conversation yesterday about data, and data does tell the story. And data tells us that $5.48 are being allocated by philanthropy to women and girls of color. 0.5% of all philanthropic dollars are going to women and girls of color. That's it. And so maybe with that data, we actually know, I can say women and girls of color are uninvested in. both from the field when I worked in the field and now working in philanthropy. Now I have a hard report that tells us how much is getting invested in different parts of the country. In Texas, it's $1 per woman and girl of color that's getting invested in by philanthropy. In the southern states, it's $2.38 in the entirety of the southern states, including Atlanta, all the way, you know. So, I mean, like, let's understand that when you have hard data, you can tell a story about why there are such disparities in systems across those areas. And we know that women and girls of color are not getting invested in.
No. And with that, like, dollar, they're doing, like, miracles with literally with pocket change. They're doing miracles.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think people forget, you know, I have a young woman who's doing some volunteer work at the foundation, and she's like, you know, I took out literally pocket change. She's like, I took money out of my pocket and put it down and realized I had more money in my pocket that day than we invest in women and girls of color in an entire year.
That's crazy.
I mean, like, that context, right, is unbelievable. And they are getting the work done. And yet we ask ourselves, why are there health disparities, right? Why are there, you know, it is because when stress is put upon you, your body reacts differently, right? And so it does make sense that we have so many health disparities, and that pressure is real and it's built into our DNA. And yet we continue to serve our communities. We continue to provide what the community needs, and we continue to advocate for what that looks like, right? You know, so impressive.
I even think about my mom and the stuff that, like, she gets done, you know, when she was very, you know, went through time when she was very sick. And I'm like, I had no idea you were that sick. You were, like, homeschooling and doing this and helping me out, and, you know, no complaint. Yeah.
Well, we do what has to get done so often and so many times. I want to ask. We only have about 5-10 minutes left, but I want to ask a question because I consider philanthropy time, treasure, and talent. And I know that you have folks who are friends of yours who are in the movement, who are doing work. And I'd love to hear, you know, and have you share, how are you sharing your time, talent, and treasure in the areas that really matter to your heart? And today you're giving us your time and your talent and your treasure to be with us. But I know this is just one of the kind of areas that you are committed to making change happen.
No, I mean, first and foremost, what I really try to do is educate myself by talking to people like you, people that are, like, really doing it. It's their life's work, you know, so that I'm helping in a way and supporting in a way that is the most beneficial, you know, and isn't just like, okay, putting a post on Instagram, but how can I go and learn about something? Like, I went to this thing where I could get really educated on Bell and, like, the criminalization of poverty. And there was a wonderful, wonderful young Black woman there from the ACLU by the name of Nicole. So hi, Nicole, if you're watching. I don't know if you are probably doing, like, you're probably out in the field doing stuff, you know. And she was saying to me, I said to her, I was like, you know, God, what you're doing is really changing people's lives, you know. And I'm like, I'm not changing people's lives, but I want to see how I can help and best support. And she was saying to me, you know, but I can go into a room and I can give the numbers and the stats, but it's overwhelming to people. But your storytelling, right? So, like, on a show like Queen Sugar or whatever, there's something about the same information, but being, you know, funneled to people through music or a movie or storytelling that really affects their hearts. Like, she's like, I can't touch people's hearts. I can educate them, but I can touch people's hearts. So she's like, so for you to come and learn about all of this and then to be able to sort of put it in arts, that's like a whole other level. So, you know, so to what I'm doing, trying to educate myself so that I'm, you know, really not just sort of like getting false information from different places. Because that was one of the things my activist friends were saying to me. They're like, God, you know, we love that people are uplifting these subjects, but they're not actually talking to the people that are really, really doing it and communicating it in a really accurate way. It's just kind of like they read a post somewhere from someone else, you know, and I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person. But, you know, in terms of, like, you know, social justice stuff and, you know, in terms of what's happening with, like, our prison systems and going to Africa and seeing, you know, how to best help those kids that are, you know, are orphans, you know, but need education, need school, need food, need clothes, you know, how can I help? But I like to go and see, because sometimes you don't really know. There's so many places to give. There's so many places, and I think people get overwhelmed. Like, where do I start? Where do I begin? Is this thing vetted? And that's what's great about the Miss organization, because, you guys know, like, if I gave you money, I know exactly, like, that it's going where it really needs to go, and to the women that, like, really need it and are going to, like, do extraordinary things with it. So just that, really, so thank you.
I'm going to correct you on one thing. You said I'm not changing people's lives, and you are. You are. You're to young children who are looking on the screen sometimes what Miss Blackmore was to me, right? You're the image that we get to see, and you are holding a space, creating a space, and lifting people up. And I have to tell you, not every influencer entertainer is as conscious as you, and the idea that you are, like, really stepping in to, like, educate yourself, lift people up, acknowledge where things are, like, that is a modeling that I think sometimes people forget. And it is how we live our daily lives with the values that we hold that make a change in the world. If you were a mean, vicious, hideous person, that would come out. And that's not who you are. And you hold that value of love and understanding, commitment, and all the values that I think kind of exude, at least in our conversations, which are have been open and been like, hey, what about that? Right? And so I want to say that, because I think sometimes we forget. I feel like that sometimes too. It's like, oh, I'm just trying to do what I can every day. And we don't know whose lives we're touching. And it's so, if we're speaking our truth and telling our story and opening a door for somebody, that we don't know what that's going to do 100 years from now, and it's so amazing. And I'm so grateful. And you're right. It's groups like the Miss, but you don't have to have all the answers, right? You just have to find the people who you trust who have the answers, right? So Miss, you can make a donation to Miss, and we then move the money to the field across the country. And, particularly to women and women of color-led organizations. And so that's our intention, right, is to how do we build gender equity? How do we acknowledge that race and gender are not separated, that they are a constant part of our existence, and we have to be just a little uncomfortable to make the changes happen that we need to have happen in our society.
Unapologetic.
Yes, unapologetic. Bold and unapologetic.
Bold and unapologetic.
That is our work. We have only a few minutes left, but I wanted to make sure, before I ask my last question and we get into a conversation about that, I wanted to see if you had any questions of me that I needed to make sure I gave you space for, because I don't want you to sit but you talked the whole time.
No, it's okay. No, I'm good. If I think of something, I'll interject, but no, go ahead.
Okay. So, my final question of all of these conversations we've had, and you are our fifth guest, and we're just, like, super excited. We're actually going to take a little break after this and then come back in October. But one of the questions I asked, because I'm working from home every day, I spend a lot of time in front of my refrigerator. I had to make notes on my refrigerator to remind me of things. Like, it says things like, there's only eat 2 cookies. And I had to add all day, because, like, I would go, like, eat 2 cookies and go away and come back and eat 2 cookies more. So I had to, like, add all day, only 1 glass of wine all day. So, like, there are messages that we give ourselves.
Does it work? Do you stop at 1 glass and 2 cookies?
Sometimes. If they're Oreos, I can double stuff. I went from the regular Oreo to the double stuff Oreos. So, and the glass of wine, actually, it averages out to 1 glass a night. So I think that, I should have bought stock in a winery. I really should have when we went into COVID times. So what I ask is, what kind of messages, images, magnets do you have on your refrigerator, and what do you think they tell you or you reflect on?
I don't really have much on my fridge, actually, but there is a Toni Morrison quote, you're your best thing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. I like that.
Because I think sometimes we forget, right? And we place all this value on things that are external to us, to feel like, oh, validation, but no, you're your best thing.
Yeah. I love that, because it really does play into work around self-care, right? If we don't care for ourselves, right? And that actually, I'm gonna go write that on. I have a dry erase board on my refrigerator, which is why I have stuff. I'm gonna go write that on my refrigerator when we're done, because it reminds us that we are our best thing. And if we don't invest in ourselves and take care of ourselves and do the things that we need to do,
you can't help anybody else.
That's right. That's right. It's amazing. Well, Bianca, we have come on our half-hour ringer mark, but I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us, for being persistent, and getting. It's been amazing, and I could talk with you another 15 minutes, but my team is saying that we have to be respectful of everybody's time.
Okay.
But I want to thank you for all you're doing and for your partnership with the Ms. Foundation, and for sharing your voice and doing what you do, which has been outstanding. And we're really grateful that you are encouraging us all to roar, to lift our voices, to tell our stories. And I will say this to you, not that you need to hear it from me, but please keep being a badass and pushing on all the norms that are out there, so that we can make sure we have a really comprehensive image of who women are, and that people recognize that we are not monolithic, and you can't just, sweep us over with a paintbrush. And I'm really grateful to you. Thank you
thank you so much for having me and chatting with me. I loved it.
This is great. And to everybody who followed us today, thank you so much. We are going to come back in early October, and we want you to just follow along on Instagram with the Ms. Foundation, and you'll be able to see who our next line of guests are as we try to continue to support women and girls of color. And we recognize that pocket change, how women are doing more with less, is not a sustainable spot to stay. And we actually need to allow women and girls of color to do more with more. So thank you all. And have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.